everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you for joining me. Back at it with another video. I want to talk to you guys about a transit that is actually going to be setting up here over the next week, but I figured it was kind of probably a good idea to kind of get ahead of it a little bit. And it may or may not be something other people are really talking about. I'm sure I'm going to touch on this more during my weekly astro weather that I'll be doing this Sunday. But yeah, if you guys are new to my channel, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up or go ahead and hit that subscription button so you are alerted as to when I have new content coming out on the channel. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Venus in Aries transit coming into a square with Pluto and Capricorn. Now, this is going to be a transit that is going to be felt the strongest from about May 26th through the 28th. However, those of you guys who are more on the sensitive side, you may actually start feeling this right about now. Just pulling up my chart here so I can kind of take a look at what we have got going on. Oh my goodness, Mercury retrograde, man. This is some funky energy we're dealing with right now. All right, so Venus in Aries square Pluto and Capricorn. Why did I feel inclined to talk about this transit? Well, as you guys know, the North Node is in Taurus and the South Node is in Scorpio. So anytime there's anything going on with either Mars or Venus, it is going to be quite significant because it's going to be kind of echoing through this astrological echo chamber of other transits of where we're going, you know, what direction we're going in, North Node and Taurus, and Scorpio South Node, what we're moving away from. So when we see these two planets in a hard angle to one another, it's definitely going to bring up some of these themes of a turning point and needing to make some rather difficult decisions, or it can also relate to us just matter of factly not getting along, right? Kind of like battle of the sexes we might see also with some of these squares. Now, like I said, you're going to feel this from about May 26th through the 28th if you are somebody who is either a Mars or a Venus ruled chart. So if you are Aries rising, Scorpio rising, if you are a Libra rising or a Taurus rising, you're going to feel this pretty significantly. Kind of the hot zones are definitely going to be anywhere around 25 to about 29 degrees of the cardinal signs. So if you have a sun, moon, or rising in the last, decan of any one of the cardinal signs, you're going to feel this because the square is going to bring up this pressure. And for many of the cardinal squares, especially if you happen to find that your birthday or your sun or your rising is kind of aligning with that third decan, you've been dealing with the Pluto squares for quite some time, so this is nothing that's really kind of new for you. Some of you guys might kind of get aftershocks of things that have been going on really since the better part of like 2017, 2018, and it may be reminiscent of some of the squares that you were encountering while Pluto was in Capricorn in conjunction to Saturn, so just be mindful of that. Now, Venus is the ruler of Taurus, and Venus, especially when associated with Taurus, is about our food, our comfort. It's about face masks and massages. It's about gardens that we grow, knowing that our money is safe, knowing that our bodies are safe, and feeling really kind of within that kind of Venusian field that Taurus likes to kind of hang out in. So this North Node transit through Taurus is really reiterating the need for us to feel like we have stability and security, solid ground under our feet. We're going to see that keep coming up over and over. Now, where the North Node talks about where we're going or where we need to go for some kind of spiritual growth, it has the darker side to it as well. I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely noticing this, like, you know, going to the grocery store, getting groceries, and just the prices of everything, right? Inflation, they're saying it's inflation. Yeah, inflation's real, but the price gouging that's happening, and it can be quite literal with anything that's tied or connected to cows. So like milk, dairy, maybe even butter. It can be anything from like going and getting steaks to hamburgers. And obviously there's like a chain of events, because if inflation's happening, increased food costs are going up. We're seeing increased costs for transportation. There in turn, grocery stores are kind of raising the prices. It's insanity, right? And I don't really feel like this is going to slow down anytime soon. So with this transit of the North Node in Taurus and the eclipses in Taurus, and kind of building towards this North Node Uranus conjunction that's going to be taking place the end of July, the first week of August, it's having everybody really think long and hard about, what do I value, right? Is it more important for me to have a designer bag, or is it more important for me to pay my mortgage? I guess that example in itself is very first world problems, because we've got, countries that are starving, and we've got, people having to make some very difficult and hard decisions about how they're going to feed their families, right? How they're going to be able to, still maintain feeding, families of 4, 5, 6 people on what may be a very limited budget, especially just with what's going on here economically, but throughout the world, right? I'm very conscious and aware, just through like travel and some of the experiences that I've had, that the United States is I would consider very fortunate in many ways. Is the system broken? Yeah. Could we have healthcare? Could we have more support? Could we have a lot of things going in different directions? Yes, but in comparison to what's going on in the rest of the world, I think that we should consider ourselves very blessed. Now, with that South Node being in Scorpio, obviously, Mars transits are going to show us where there is reactions that are coming, revolving around scarcity, fear, not having enough, what we need to fight for, what we're willing to do to have security, right? So, I think of like the parents that are going through situations right now with like not knowing how they're going to be able to feed their children because they can't get formula. The people who are without a job, and they've been without jobs for periods of time, that are now willing to kind of lean into some unsavory things to be able to make a living, to provide for themselves and for their families. What they're willing to steal, what they're willing to sell, what they're willing to do to be able to survive, right? Because Scorpio, being the opposition to Taurus, it's the things that we do in the dark that we may not be proud of, that may challenge our survival, and it kind of brings out this like very primal, like Mars energy. So what I'm getting at is that when we see the rulers of both of these particular nodes come into friction or a hard angle, we're going to see like this turning point where tensions are very likely to rise. Like I see squares as like boiling points. And if you think back in time to like what was happening earlier this year, we saw that Mars and Venus, especially in March, were moving through the sign of Aquarius, and they came into a conjunction with Saturn. So it was this seriousness, this crystallization, the commitment, the unwilling to bend, the separation, isolation, the sacrifice that we needed to make on a very like global level. Like we were really feeling the crunch of that in March and into April. So the reason why I think this is going to be different is really a number of reasons. One is, when these two planets square off, it's not just Venus square Pluto, which brings up, tensions arising around health, right? Around feminine matters, reproductive rights, anything in regards to the individual Aries versus power and authority, Capricorn. And cardinal squares are incredibly active. So as a Venus and Pluto square being sometimes on a very personal level, jealousy, power plays, possessiveness, wanting to kind of tit for tat, having some drama, acting compulsively. Globally, I think we're going to see this as a situation where like people are really starting to lash out and push back, where they are not capable or being allowed to have resources, enjoy pleasure, things like that. And Venus being in Aries, it's in a Mars sign. So you guys have to understand that right when the Pluto square is setting up, that square is going to be taking place at about 27, 28 degrees of of Aries. And it's right as the moon in Aries is coming into this conjunction as well. Happens to be right around the same time that we're also going to see Mars ingress into Aries, which, you know, Mars obviously is the ruling planet for Aries. I think that in itself is kind of like finally getting out of this long drawn out Mars, Neptune kind of energy that's been very draining in Pisces. But when planets cross 0 degrees of a cardinal sign, like we feel that, like it's like the start of something new. So just Mars going into Aries would be enough for me to be like, something's happening here. But Mars enters, comes into conjunction with Jupiter and Aries, or explosive, reactionary, got to do it now energy. And then the moon is actually going to be in the mix as well. So I really want you guys to pay attention to what's actually happening the better part of like the 25th. It's going to start a little bit early. Remember, the moon brings up these moods. So with the moon being in Aries, there is this self-starting, initiatory, on my own, you know, really diving into these natural kind of primal instincts. And we're heated, right? Because the moon being in Aries can bring up reactions, immaturity, you know, childlike kind of behavior. And we're feeling a little spicy. So we're going to start feeling that on the 25th. And then shortly after, on the 26th, when this transit is setting up, we've got the moon and Venus conjunct, which is actually pretty sweet. Those of you guys who have planets in late degrees of Aries, it's a lot of like, what's best for me? You know, well, what about me? But what about loving me? What about my values, my money, my partner? And that's okay. It's actually like, I'm okay with that because it's making the sextile to Saturn, and it's making quite a few aspects that I feel like that's part of the lesson that's like really needing to lean into my personal pleasure, my personal values. And if you guys haven't already kind of had that experience, well, Venus has been in Aries, you're going to have it on the 26th. And we're going to see as Venus comes into the square with Pluto, it's going to bring up some pretty intense themes. And I think really the key is to realize that, you know, we can't talk about love and be in love and practice love if we're trying to dominate or control, right? And that we really want to focus on regenerative, like changing energies, that relationships evolve, right? Finances fluctuate. But what should remain and what should be solid is this real focus and emphasis on what we value and sticking to our values and remembering what our own personal desires may be. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about just some food for thought, and we're going to look at the archetypal universe and what Ren Butler has to say about this square. But I will tell you that, and I've noticed this pattern in transits, whether it's just, you know, the week that the square is setting up, or if somebody's undergoing, you know, a transit Pluto square their Venus, I am always aware of just really intense conflict, and it can be destructive patterns that are coming up where people are realizing that they may not really genuinely be showing or expressing love in an appropriate way, right? And the square is meant to bring up issues so that way you can be aware that there are underlining and emerging desires and passions and frustrations that are kind of bubbling underneath the surface. And by acknowledging that they're there and breaking through some of these issues with jealousy or possessiveness or destructive kind of behaviors in relationships or manipulative, you know, ways, I could see that Venus with a square to Pluto can be like overdoing it, right? Like, you know, overspending to keep a relationship, or overdoing sex or pleasure or touch or things like that as a means to be able to kind of contain and hold on or control something. So we're going to see some of these things come up. And I would encourage everybody that if you're having these things playing out in your life, to really meditate on like what's the juice of the situation? Like what am I learning here? You know, where is love, not necessarily possession? And I think a lot of people are going to deal with a lot of conflicts in their own personal needs, physical needs, you know, sexual desires, their natural instinctual desires, and what they need for security versus what somebody is telling them they can or cannot do. And whether that's like, you know, being in a committed relationship and feeling like you need more intimacy, but somebody is denying that, and you're feeling like it's just coming out of you, but you're constrained by this, you know, commitment and the power of being able to stay in a committed relationship or a marriage because they're paying your bills, right? Or, you know, staying in a position where you're working and, you know, you're overworking and possibly doing too much and possibly even doing some unsavory things, but it's like, but I get a paycheck. Right? These are the kind of situations and the scenarios that we have a tendency to see when this square takes place. So, you know, we got some hot stuff going on. I wanted to do a video prior to doing the astro weather to just kind of like let you guys know that this energy is going to be setting up very, very heavily throughout this next week. And when we see squares between planets that represent the North Node and the South Node, it's where are we going and what are we moving away from? And where are we being pushed to actually respond, react, and, you know, behave differently, right? I kind of see like, you know, Pluto being one of the badasses of astrology, obviously Venus being like this beautiful goddess and being something that represents women and female bodies and reproductive, you know, rights and things like that, and pleasure and joy. So I think we're also going to see a much angrier kind of side of Venus that's emerging as she comes into a square with Pluto. Now, the later degrees of Aries currently, we have Aries that's moving through there. Maybe you guys have seen a video that I've done on Aries previously. But Aries being in the late degrees of Aries, you know, much further out in the actual, you know, out in space, beyond Pluto, basically, is kind of this higher octave of Pluto. So Aries is like Kali energy. She is about, you know, war and pleasure, but pain and regeneration and divine, angry, feminine, primal energy. So she's kind of like the female counterpart to Pluto, right? And because she's further out in space, her orbit, her cycles are much slower. So if we think of how long it takes to go through a Pluto transit, the Aries transits are going to be even longer. Now, when we have these conjunctions that are going to start taking place in the 26, 27, 28 degrees of Aries, it is on top of Aries. So if you're somebody who works with astrological, like asteroids and things like that, or dwarf planets, you can go and look at and see if your software supports being able to add this glyph. But I think that that's something else that's worthy of mentioning, that I'm wondering if this is like a war on women, a war on fertility, a war on reproductive rights. Obviously, that's been playing out in the news quite a bit here in the United States. And how the feminine energies, not women per se, but how feminine energies are responding to that. Are they responding to that with, you know, answering the call of war and standing up and actually, you know, fighting back, right? And with the square to Pluto, Pluto in Capricorn is like those who are in high-ranking government positions, or I think like cops, judges, politicians, and just governing powers of control, right? So this is a big theme. In the midst of all of this, we still have the Mercury retrograde. Mercury's retrograding. It's going to go back into Taurus. It's going to trine Pluto. So we're going to hear more about some of this stuff. We may be hearing about some very significant scandals relating to the wives or mistresses or women that are associated with men in power. I think recently I heard on the news, I'm not sure, I don't know everything yet. I'm still waiting to see how it plays out. I really try not to watch the news, but something about one of the court justices for the Supreme Court. Let me see, I'll just pull it up because I don't want to botch this. Gemini Justice, wife of Supreme Court Justice, pressed Arizona lawmakers to deepen her involvement in reversing Trump's losses. So obviously, we don't know. That was the Washington Post, just so you guys know. But it is talking about, once again, I was like, oh, that's very Venus-Pluto. You know, we're going to hear more about this and like where perhaps maybe women were getting involved in positions of power and we're trying to, you know, do some unsavory things. The Venus square Pluto can definitely be bringing up a lot of like female villains as well, and stuff that involves scandals, secrets, you know, money, crime, prostitution, anything that's very kind of Pluto related, but it's more power related, right? More than anything else. And, you know, I'm also looking at very shortly after this transit, once we get into what will then be May 28th on, we've got Mars in Aries, which is very comfortable there. It's ruling there. It's in conjunction to Jupiter. So I think that we're seeing war-like energy that's emerging, or things that are blown out of proportion, or intense standoffs, or things that are going to be very kind of inflamed, right? Very Mars. And then we see Venus move into Taurus, right? And it's all in the midst of Gemini season. So quite honestly, you know, yes, these squares are important, but once the sun's moved into Gemini, I'm really focusing more on Mercury. And I think having Mercury still in very close proximity to the North Node, and it's activating eclipse points, and then we've got Mercury conjunct the sun and moon, and we're coming into this new moon in Gemini that's going to be taking place on the 29th. There's a lot of things that are going to get blown out of proportion, or there's going to be a lot of information that's flooding certain networks or online, you know, forums, or stuff that deals with like apps and the internet and all kinds of stuff, that something's going to be ablaze with putting a lot of information out, but it may also be overshadowing something that's also been happening with this Venus square Pluto. Going out on a little bit of a limb here, but you know, just something that I have noticed that has been happening over the last couple of months is that anytime we're seeing these document dumps that are coming up with the Pfizer trials, it seems like clockwork, there is also something else that is coming up in the news. There's some crisis. Whether or not the crisis is real or fake, I'm not here to discuss that. I'm not going to speculate, but I am going to say it's really interesting and kind of very coincidental that, you know, okay, there's a Pfizer dump and there's this huge, you know, news about war in Ukraine. Okay, there's another dump, and then all of a sudden we're hearing about monkeypox, right? That's the new thing. I find it interesting that everybody's texting me about monkeypox. What's going to happen? And I'm like, go to Twitter, type in monkeypox. The first thing that you're going to see that's going to come up is monkeypox vaccine, monkeypox lockdown. And I'm like, what does that tell you? I'm like, you know, is it just another orchestrated kind of chaotic event that is smoke and mirrors and possibly distracting from really important, significant information that's coming out? Obviously, do your own research, right? I'm not sitting here hoping to be, you know, this conspiracy theorist astrologer. Certainly, a lot of us have gotten canceled for that. But these transits are happening in the midst of what will be the very beginning of June. And if I am correct, I believe, I'm going to double check here. I believe that it's mandating, and they're doing it at the beginning of each month. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be like that's something that's been the theme. I'm pretty sure. So let me know. But yeah, May 2nd, June 1st, July 1st, right? We're going to keep seeing this stuff, you know, that's going to keep coming out. So I would say look at the news cycles that are happening, right? Is it distracting you from the fact that there is a war that's starting? Is it distracting you from the fact that maybe that they're telling you there's war, there's all kinds of like attacks on health or on people, that is deflecting some of the stuff that's going on, right? So very specifically on a little bit of information about the Venus square Pluto, obviously one of my books that I keep on my desk. It's also in my Amazon book link, so if you click below, you'll see it. The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler. So I want to talk to you guys about what he has to say about Pluto-Venus themes, and we'll go ahead and start. It's on page 136. If you have this book. If you don't, you should. Principles: deep and intense passions, renewing, regenerating forces in relationships, the power of love and the drive to unite, interplay of beauty and the beast, tendency towards obsessive attractions, feelings of jealousy, possessiveness, passive aggression, manipulation, and love of power. Primal feelings of love and attraction, deep and intense passion, sense of a positive fatedness operating in one's partnerships, renewing and generating forces in relationships, profound relationship understanding. I mean, that's the silver lining here, is that Pluto can very much be shining a light on what needs to change and transform, so that way Venus can truly bloom, right? And that's what Venus is going to do when she leaves Aries and she goes into Taurus. Take into consideration also, very soon, Venus will be conjunct the North Node, and Venus will also be making conjunctions to Uranus. Venus is going to trine Pluto. So this Venus transit is going to be very powerful, and we're going to have to change and transform and adapt our money, our values, our senses, our sense of security, our pleasure, right? There is like an upgrade coming. And Uranus and Pluto deal very much with the lower chakras. They deal with like that Kundalini energy. They deal with our root chakra, with, you know, do we have everything that we need to survive and feel secure? So I think that with Venus making contact with Uranus and making a trine to Pluto, we have to dig deep. We have to get down in there, and we have to say, what do I value? What brings me pleasure? What does my heart desire? What do I really want? And Taurus teaches us to get back down to the basics. I think that it's just interesting to me that we've seen a lot of, at least I've seen a lot of in the media that I'm following, people talking about, you know, going back to basics, growing your own food, learning about food preservation, jarring, preserving, growing your own stuff, learning also about composting, right? Very Pluto. And where we can actually be using our coffee grounds, our eggs, all of our you know, biodegradable natural things to be able to start composting and focusing on how we can have fertile ground, right? Have natural dirt that isn't loaded with a bunch of garbage, that doesn't have a bunch of chemicals and pesticides and other things in it, and how to get in there with our hands and do it ourselves. This is the future. And I think that, unfortunately, we're kind of getting a dose here with this week of really seeing what our values are really made of. What is most important? Is it important for us to be putting a lot of money into the stock market? Or do we feel like we need to be focusing on saving money and not taking risks and not buying into the Venus-Pluto opportunity to increase wealth? Or kind of take the poison apple. Venus-Pluto always reminds me of that. It always reminds me of Snow White and the poison apple, and whether or not you're willing to take, you know, the temptation, if you're willing to take what looks good, right? Shadow qualities can be overbearing sweetness, friendliness, manipulative yin style, passive forms of aggression, pushy, obnoxious aesthetic, the love of power, power infatuation, urges to control one's friends or loved ones, romantic obsessions, dangerous, forbidden love, harmful temptations, sexual addictions, throwaway relationships, the urge to use sex or beauty for ulterior purposes, feelings of jealousy and possessiveness, a sense of betrayal, right? Very South Node Scorpio, betrayal. Seen a lot of people who have Venus in Scorpio, Venus conjunct Pluto. I've seen a lot of like Venus, Neptune, and Scorpio people that have been telling me that they've been reflecting on betrayal in their life and where they've been hurt and where it's set a very uncomfortable pattern moving forward of where they're having issues in relationships because of past betrayals, and that jealousy is coming up and possessiveness is coming up, and they're obsessively, you know, worried about what their partner is doing, or talking to somebody that they're not comfortable with them talking to, or becoming very fixated on, you know, injecting their face or enhancing their body or doing really extreme things so that way they can maintain that relationship, they can have that person. I think that the North Node in Taurus, at least for me, right, and it's kind of funky because it's going through my 8th house, so it's always very kind of backwards in what the world is going through. It has actually made me realize that the only pure thing that we can hold on to is love, but that love is not containing, that we cannot possess something, right? And I see this all the time with, you know, people who are really fixated on, you know, look at my beautiful house and look at my art and look at my beautiful wife, look at my nice car. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I think that a lot of, you know, where we're going, eventually moving more into the age of Aquarius, is we can be abundant and successful, and we can thrive, and we can also still very much be in alignment with spirit. Everything is vibration. But a lot of what's happening right now is that if we have bought into the idea that things or money or possessions, right, are going to give us security, it's false. Right? A lot of us are realizing that it doesn't matter if you have, you know, a wealthy spouse or you have an inheritance. You never know when one of those can run out, right? And so I think that we're having to kind of get back to basics and really kind of realize like what we need, and loving things in a more natural, like organic way. And getting back down to basics in relationships as well. I think that the last couple of years has really put a lot of relationships through the ringer, and a lot of people have really kind of realized that when we're in crisis and when it seems like the world is kind of breaking down, maybe then it's when we really realize like who we're with. And I can see it going both ways. You know, I've seen my fair share of friends and family members and a lot of clients who have unfortunately had to kind of consciously uncouple and separate because of just the pressure of what's gone on with the world over the last couple of years with the economy and with COVID and everything that's been going on. But I don't think you hear enough about people who come together in the midst of this, and that the people who maybe were already kind of on the rocks in their relationship, that this brought them closer to realizing like, no, I love my family. I value this. I don't want to let this go. I don't want to lose, you know, what we've built. And I've also seen it, you know, separate certain individuals in relationships, and then in turn align them once they got their priorities kind of straight, or they got their values straight. It aligned them with the right person who also was in the midst of doing, you know, kind of the same thing. Maybe it's just me. That's definitely the experience that I had. You know, I look back on 2020 and I think a lot about what happened and, you know, what was going on in my life, and how my values really significantly changed, and how all of those shifts and those changes and kind of that awakening that I went through with a lot of Pluto transits, a lot of Saturn transits, led me down the path of being like, okay, I'll just give it all up. You know, I don't have to live here. I don't have to have these things. I don't have to be in this specific relationship. You know, I can let it go. I can kind of start over. And that's very much the energy of Pluto. It's just release, let it go. Don't hold on to it, right? We don't want to hold on to the body and the corpse and everything at the funeral. We want to celebrate the ending, because maybe it's just me, but like, you know, life and death, they have like this very kind of like romantic intertwined relationship, and they both love each other, but they can't come together. Kind of similar to Venus and Mars. It's very rare that you see that, you know, Venus and Mars comes into that conjunction. But Pluto with this square is really challenging in bringing up fears and issues with power and control. And I would just say we want to watch for that. Don't buy into some of the power struggles, you know, don't buy into the jealousy, the manipulation, the control, the fear. Know that it is going to be a moment where we are meant to be asking ourselves, is this love? Do I value this? Can I hold on to this? And is love supposed to feel manipulative or jealous? Am I really functioning at the highest kind of level that I could be when it comes to my relationships, my values, and things like that? So very quickly, I'm going to go through all of the 12 signs. I'm going to tell you guys where this is taking place and give you just a short snippet on how this may play out. Like I said, I plan on talking about this more during my astro weather. I'm a Western astrologer, so this is going to be for whole sign. Please listen to your ascendant and then listen to your sun sign. The ascendant is going to tell you where this is taking place. The sun sign is going to talk about more how it's impacting you. And like I said, if you happen to have planets that are anywhere between, let's say, 26 and maybe 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, pay attention. You're going to feel this the most. Sun, moon, or rising, especially the cardinal ascendants. And if you have any personal placements in Aries or Capricorn in these last degrees, so 26, 27, 28, 29 degrees of those signs, you are going to feel this as well. All right. So for Aries and Aries rising, obviously this is taking place in your sign. So you have Venus in your first house, which is great. It's great for health. It's great for relationships, great for partnerships. Venus rules your second and your seventh house. So it's about people and the exchange that you have with people and what's yours versus what people bring you and that kind of thing. So Venus being in your first, coming into a square with Pluto in your 10th, makes me wonder if there's possibly this profound shift or change with how you identify out in the world. It can be a status change, a title change. It can also be that you're kind of coming to terms with the quote unquote right or responsible thing to do, but you're being challenged in some way. So some of you guys are like, you know, I was single, now I'm engaged, you know, I was an employee, now I'm a CEO. And you want to watch for, with this square, tit for tat, especially with people in the professional world when it comes to money and resources. Now, one thing I didn't really mention, and I should say this now also, is that you know, the 10th house is challenging, I guess I should say Pluto is challenging Venus, right? So you want to listen to where Pluto is, and it's going to be challenging Venus, and it's going to see what you're kind of willing to change or kind of clear. And equally, you really want to pay attention because this is kind of initiating and starting like a domino effect for everyone once it goes into Taurus. So it's going to be kind of being like, okay, no, I value this, or like, no, we're done. You know, there can be a sense of also Pluto killing off certain relationships or certain resources, or us realizing that our values are just outdated. Okay, thank you for letting me interject that. Mercury retrograde. All right, so look for that, Aries. Look for, you know, there being a need to kind of stand up against authority, stand up against bullies, standing up against something that's going on at work. Be very careful with anything in regards to like sexual harassment and stuff in the workplace. That can sometimes happen with that, or people who are kind of jerking you around about money and resources. The card that I got for you is the Chariot. So this is interesting because this is also referencing the moon. So like that lunar transit that's happening right when it goes through, I think that's where you want to pay attention, because there can be a very strong emotional reaction that you're having. It can also be just about you kind of realizing like, whoa, these moods are coming from somewhere, from something, got to move it around, got to change it. The Chariot does talk about movement. So it can also be this realization that you need to move your body, you need to get this stuff out of your system, you need to keep things moving, so that way you're not feeling like you're as on edge, you know, but definitely some moodiness, or really paying attention to your natural instinct and like where you're going. For Taurus and Taurus rising, this is significant because it's involving Venus, and Venus is your chart ruler. Now, you've got Venus moving through your 12th house, so Venus is completing a cycle. Venus in the 12th is great for like bedtime pleasures, goddess worship, anything in regards to like time away. But having your chart ruler hanging out in your 12th in Aries is still uncomfortable. And I think you're just waiting for like a certain phase to kind of clear. You know, Venus for you is definitely about your physical energy and your vitality in your body. So it can also be a sense of kind of waiting for a sense of like not feeling well, or not getting clarity in a relationship, or kind of feeling like you're hiding out to just kind of, you know, clear out. And I think it will when Venus goes into your sign. So you're definitely going to see that kind of get a little bit more so stable, somewhere closer to the 28th. Now, Venus is in a hard angle to Pluto, which is in your 9th house. And this can represent like hidden enemies, which are foreigners. It can represent unexpected kind of changes in terms of your belief or your philosophy, things that challenge your belief system. It can also represent unexpected kind of like crisis that deal with your beliefs, or unexpected breakdown that might be happening either with travel, education, or possibly even just legal stuff that kind of comes out of the blue, right? This will affect you, especially because Pluto rules your natal 7th house. So there is some kind of sense of either psychically or karmically, or maybe in a dream, you're, you know, clearing something out. Some of you may feel a bit threatened by what's kind of going on, and you're feeling the need to kind of spiritually protect yourself. I would say, being that Venus is in your 12th, you are protected. You're definitely going to see that. Things are going to calm down a little bit. But just shortly after that, Mars is also going to go into your 12th house. So that kind of makes me feel like you're a bit stressed about stuff that's going on in regards to relationship stuff, and it's a test of the faith. Now, the card that jumped out for you was the Hermit. And this is interesting because this is really talking about being like, do I retreat? You know, do I pull back? Is there a need for me to kind of like reflect on things and like really kind of go back into my shell, like really go on a trip, spend some time alone, kind of reflect so I can kind of even these energies out. For Gemini and Gemini rising, this is Venus coming into a square with Pluto. Venus is in your 11th house of friendships. And you have got the square happening to Pluto in your 8th. So there can be some issues with infidelity. Are friends really friends? Is there something more going on behind the scenes secretly or romantically? Is a friend getting a little flirty? Is there a sense of you becoming very attracted to a particular group or a goal? Are you feeling like maybe you're willing to kind of cut loose and do something that's a little bit outside of your usual social norm? You know, is that what's going on here? I think that Venus being in the 11th is nice, though. It is making positive aspects to your sign. Air fuels fire. And I would just watch out for secrets that are being exposed in regards to friendships, or maybe if you find out that like a friend is going through a crisis and, you know, they put you in a position and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can like listen to this. Like, I don't know if I can give you advice on this. Like, is this legal? Or like, does your husband know? Or like, why are you calling me? There can be some sense of getting a little antsy about some of the information that you're receiving, or some of the attention that somebody is giving you. The card that I got is the 4 of Coins. So it is talking about holding yourself back, you know, keeping yourself in a position of being like, I'm not really going to open up. I'm not going there. This can also be about temptation, like a friend trying to convince you to like invest in something, or like a pyramid scheme, or it could be like crypto. I don't know. And they're like, yeah, just give me your money. You know, it's a good idea. And you're like, I don't know about that, because the 8th house is other people's money. So as you see other people, Pluto in the 8th, putting the pressure on Venus in the 11th, I would say really take your time and don't be investing or giving money to anybody unless they really know what they're doing. And I would wait until this transit passes. Cancer and Cancer rising, Venus is moving through your natal 10th house of career. And it's coming into a square with Pluto in your 7th. So like Aries, this is going to be a little uncomfortable for you, Cancer. You are going to see that because Venus is the ruler of your natal 4th house, it is making some uncomfortable angles to the 7th house Pluto transit. So if you live with a partner, if you have a roommate, if you're living with family, if there's anything like that, there can be some uncomfortable stuff that's going on currently in regards to your domestic zone and your relationship with another person, because it's going to be squaring. Now, one thing I would say is that Pluto does traditionally rule your natal 5th house, and it's in the 7th. So I'm wondering, like, is it that you have a romantic partner around family and like things get a little uncomfortable? Is it that you are feeling like maybe, you know, you're pushing the conversation about possibly living together or making changes in your home zone, and your partner gets a little testy? I think with Venus going through your 10th also, there's this theme of like really focusing on wanting your private life to become public, and you've got a partner that's like, no, I don't want to do that yet. You know, we don't need to do that. Let's not get family involved. Let's keep our privacy. If it's not these situations, it could very well be that you're having to hash out some kind of conflict, possibly with somebody at work. It can be a parent as well. That's another way that this can play out with the 7th and the 10th. And I would say just be mindful that, you know, somehow family or domestic stuff somehow gets intertwined to either relationships or your career stuff, which can be quite uncomfortable, okay? Card that I get is the 10 of Wands. So this is talking about, just feeling like you're carrying the load. You're doing it all by yourself. It's a lot to handle. And you're like, I just want this to be done. Maybe you're hoping on moving. Maybe there's like a breaking point where you're like, okay, get this out of the house, or I'm out of the house, or we're moving. There could be something like this that can happen that feels like it's a heavy burden, but it's something that you're clearing. For Leo and Leo rising, you've got Venus coming into square with Pluto. Venus is moving through your natal 9th house. It is a fellow fire sign, and it's coming into a square with Pluto in your 6th. Leo, I wonder, is there something going on where you are traveling, or there is some temptation to stay longer, extend a flight, extend a trip? You meet somebody and you're like, oh, I gotta be at work on Monday, but like, I'm gonna call in sick. Something like that can happen. There can be some temptation to kind of fall back into old patterns, unhealthy patterns with relationships that really tests you. You also want to be really careful and mindful when it comes to your health when you're traveling, because I feel like Pluto in your 6th Could be, you know, you trying to work and travel at the same time and getting stressed. It can also be issues revolving around something you eat that affects you while you're traveling, which could make you ill. So be careful of that. And Venus moving through your ninth, coming into a square, makes me feel like there is this temptation to cut and run and, like, you know, go off and go on a trip and like avoiding any of your responsibilities within your daily routine or home, and the effect that that has. Card that I get is the Five of Swords. So it is kind of saying that there's some conflict brewing. Can be with coworkers, can be with people that you're dealing with in regards to travel or education. But this is also fierce exchanges of words. So you want to be mindful of what you're saying and how you're communicating with people and not being defensive. Virgo and Virgo rising, you have got Venus going through your 8th house. It's coming into a square with Pluto, which is in your natal 5th. To me, this is interesting because it's really reiterating that there's some really intense things going on with your romantic life, and you're kind of going back and forth emotionally or psychologically about whether or not you feel safe. And if it's possibly time to have a serious chit chat with somebody and cut somebody off because you don't feel secure. There can also be a sense of you needing to have a conversation with other people about the costs pertaining to children or creative projects, and the fact that you feel like you need more support because the 8th house is other people's money. So Venus going through this 8th house is nice. With the square to Pluto is like, okay, you know, are your kids, you know, dance lessons more expensive? Do you need to contact an ex-husband? Are you paying more for now health insurance for children or dependents? You need to reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I need some help. It's about kind of telling other people, like, I need more, right? I need more. I need more security from you. I need more assistance from you. And it may not be like you to kind of be so front and forward with it, but I feel like it needs to happen because everything that's coming up is about covering your bottom line and feeling more safe and secure, okay? Card that I get is the Threads of Fate. This is the Wheel of Fortune. So this is a positive card because it's talking about Jupiter, and it's saying like, hi, Jupiter is also in your 8th house. So you are supposed to be receiving more, even if it comes from a push or something that you have to say to somebody and basically be like, you know, I need you to show up. It's saying it's time that you've given. Now it's time to receive. If you feel like you're burnt out giving to people and you haven't been getting enough in return, then it's saying like the wheel is changing and it's time for that to kind of cycle back towards you. Libra and Libra rising, you have got Venus, your chart ruler, so this is important, going through your 7th house. So in that sense, it's great for relationships. It's bringing people in. It can be bringing in business partners, all kinds of other things who might want to collaborate with you, and they might want to support you. It can be also new counselors, therapists, business partners, romantic partners. But it's coming into a square with Pluto in your natal 4th house. And so, you know, you are Venus. So Venus going through the 7th house makes me feel like you're trying to partner with people, but it's coming into some kind of friction with your domestic zone. So it can literally be like a family member that doesn't like a romantic partner. It could be somebody from the past who comes back that threatens you know, your ability to kind of stay present in a current relationship. It can be that there's domestic issues happening, which is creating lots of conflict between you and a partner. And I can see where like the past can come back to kind of freak you out a little bit, especially like, okay, like new partners that might be repeating old patterns and stuff that kind of sets you off. There is going to be this feeling that in order to maintain the peace and the balance and the harmony in the home, like you can't facilitate all of the relationships. Like you're not going to be able to do everything for everyone. The card that I get is the Queen of Swords. So this is you, Libra. This is about you speaking up and like being fair and being diplomatic, but also needing to call a spade. And if you can't honor certain obligations, it's like being honest about it and being like direct and like, here's the deal, not beating around the bush, especially because as this gets drawn out, you want to be careful down the road, you know, for everybody. But when Mars goes into your 7th house later in the summer, it's going to square Pluto. So if these situations are not remedied now, it's going to create more domestic issues down the road. For Scorpio and Scorpio rising, this is important because it's involving your chart ruler, which is Pluto. Now you have got Venus going into your 6th house, which is great for like being of service, you know, good relationships with pets, working on your health, day-to-day kind of give back, busy work. And it's coming into a square with Pluto, which is your chart ruler in the 3rd. Now, Venus rules for you, your 12th house, which is Libra, it also rules your 7th house, which is Taurus. And it makes me feel like you're having a really serious conversation with partners about how you're feeling emotionally or psychologically, or how they're feeling. If there's some kind of stress, if somebody's overly extending themselves, if you feel like there need to be conversations that need to come out, you are the Pluto person. So being that Venus is making the aspect to you, it makes me feel like either a relationship, something that is going on subconsciously, something behind the scenes that's ending is kind of happening, and partners can be stressed, and there's a need for you to be really aware of how you're communicating and talking to people right now, because it can be creating some issues. Now, although the square is to Venus in your 6th, so that makes me feel like, you know, a partner might be having to kind of go through some tumultuousness at work, and you're kind of supportive of that. There can also be this sense of you kind of realizing that there is a really strong tie between mental health and also physical health, and you're focusing on working out and being healthier so you can kind of better balance your health in general. The card that I get is the King of Coins. So this is good. This is about you being on top of things, feeling really stable, secure, feeling good about it, knowing that you're grounded, focusing on money and resources and wellness, and like work that you can get started and like bringing more in. This can be an earth sign that comes in, like a Capricorn or Virgo or a Taurus, that can assist you in some way. Part of me wonders, Scorpio, is this about your partner and realizing that they've got something really secure and really stable, but you need to kind of help them, or, you know, help them be building towards something, especially financially or in regards to career. Sag and Sag rising, you've got Venus moving into your natal 5th house of pleasure, joy, children, and dating, and it is making a square to Pluto in your 2nd house. And this makes me feel like it's more about like, I'm in love and I'm spending money. I started this new hobby and it's expensive. I've got a kid and I have lots of expenses. It's about how much you're willing to invest or put into things that you really love. Maybe you're dating now and you're planning trips and you're going on dates and you're going to bars and you're spending money like it's burning a hole in your pocket. A lot of this is because you have, you know, Pluto in your 2nd house. Now, this can be also about obtaining things that you find valuable. So you could be investing in art, art supplies, starting a new business, and you're like, okay, this is going to be kind of pricey for me to kind of get this thing going, and it's gonna take some resources. I would say don't be spending for the sake of impressing other people. That's the one thing you want to watch out for, and just be mindful of just how much you're willing to kind of spread yourself thin for the sake of art, whether you're buying art, whether you're creating art, and how much, you know, this is going to kind of run you in the long term. Because what's going to happen is when Mars goes, like I said, for everybody, when Mars goes into Aries and it starts coming into the square with Pluto, we're going to realize where maybe we might have indulged a little too much, or where our kind of risk-taking behavior or kind of jumping the gun and jumping into things is like has consequences. So this will be in July, just so everybody knows. All right, so let's see what the card is for you, Sag, and you get the Star card. So it's about healing. Maybe you're finding like art is healing right now. Maybe like dating is healing, romance is healing. You're feeling really connected to it. And there is this sense of you like really looking at things going like, yeah, but I need to have fun, right? I need to have fun. Like there's a need for me to be with friends. Like I need to have this fun. I've earned this. I need this. And there's something very therapeutic about it. So at the very least, you're going to have a good time, but don't break the bank. For Capricorn and Cap rising, we've got Venus moving through Aries. So it's moving through your 4th house. And similar to Libra and Cancer and Aries, it's uncomfortable for you, Cap. Venus moving through your 4th, which is about home, family relations. It's coming into a square with Pluto in your sign. So to me, it kind of seems like you're just laying it all out there with some friends, with some family members. Hello, I'm still on Sag. You're laying it all out there with some family members, and you're like, this has got to change. You may be seen as somebody who's like the cop of the family. You're somebody who's coming in and kind of asserting authority and kind of telling people what they should or shouldn't do, or what they can or cannot do, or what they can or cannot spend. And this is because, you know, you are the power house with Pluto in your 1st house, and Venus is squaring you. So it can mean that you're feeling like family members are pushing you to the brink of something. It could mean that you're feeling overwhelmed because you're having to make difficult decisions about resources and cost of living. Maybe you're feeling as if, you know, your work is invading your space and you're at home with your family because maybe you're trying to save money and you're like, I got to get out of here. Something like that is going to happen because Venus is both the ruler of your 5th house, which can be children, and it's also the ruler of your 10th house, which is responsibilities. I think for many people, they're just feeling the excess responsibility and the need to kind of put more money, or they get really fixated on, okay, we're having kids, we got to put all this money in the house, we got to do this, we got to do that, and like overspending. It can also be just feeling like really taxed because you're having to take care of someone or something within the home and the family, and the way that you respond to this is going to kind of be everything, you know. Many of you guys are changing your house, investing more into your home, moving, things like that, because Jupiter and Mars are going into your 4th. So it makes me wonder, is it kind of like new home, new me? You know, you want to move somewhere and just completely start over and identify very differently and just have a clean start. The card that you get is the moon. Pay attention to when this transit starts on the 26th, when the moon goes there. I would also say that this is kind of really talking about like mother figures, maternal figures, things that are going on in private, stuff that goes on at night. Your intuition, what your intuition is telling you, and if you're feeling like there's like a real significant shift or a change that's coming. If you feel very strongly, I don't want my family in my house, I don't want people knowing where I'm living, I no longer feel like this is home, listen to that. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you've got Venus going through the sign of Aries in your 3rd house, which is about vehicles, communication, siblings, neighbors, and it's making a trine to Pluto in the 12th. You want to watch out for crime in the neighborhood. You want to watch out for issues that involve vehicles, things that can go missing or be stolen out of your vehicle or your vehicle itself. Being aware that your thoughts create your reality. And I think with Venus in the 3rd, it's making some positive aspects. Like I think that you're really focusing on like communicating more sweetly and focusing on positivity and like words and affirmations of power, so that way you can kind of combat anxiety or combat anything that makes you feel like low energy or worried, right? Being that Venus, you know, does rule for you your natal 4th house of home, and also it rules your 9th house of travel and beliefs. There's a lot changing in regards to your beliefs about where is home and how you see home or family, and also like where home could be. But I think that the square to Pluto, which is the ruler of the 10th house, is like you're so fixated on home and grounding and emotional security that you're feeling like you need to X something out. So some of you guys might actually be like, you know, resigning or saying, you know, I'm giving my notice, or I'm going to be moving, so I can't keep working here anymore. And you're having to have these difficult conversations and also sign documents that are basically suggesting that. The 9 of Cups. This is a positive card. This is saying you're going to get what you want. Everything's going to work out, what you've been wishing for. But sometimes when we're so fixated on manifesting something and bringing something into reality, we fail to forget what needs to kind of clear out, right? It's like that tower moment, or somebody knocks over Jenga at a party and we're like, oh my God, you know, but that had to happen so we could clear house and then be able to start new. So even though good things are coming, it may feel like you're really going through the muck and kind of being like, okay, I have to like let certain things go, but these things that you're letting go is creating space for what you're building because you have fixated so much on a particular goal or a dream or a desire. And last but not least, we have Pisces. So you have got Venus in your 2nd house of money and resources, your spending power. It is forming a square to Pluto, which is in your natal 11th house. And this seems to be about power struggles in regards to like your self-esteem and your values, not being kind of in alignment with your goals, or there could be issues in regards to money owed, money that is owed to you from a friend or a group or an organization, or maybe money that you owe someone else. There may be this sense of like, tension also is kind of the feeling that I'm getting, because the 3rd house rules Venus and Pluto rules your natal 9th house, that your beliefs with money and somebody else's beliefs with money, they don't align, they don't resonate. Be very careful with what advice you get also in regards to investments and trading and things like that from friends. We don't want to get into a habit of like borrowing or lending. That can be a little dicey. And the advice like that you get financially from some people also may not be totally sound right now. That's something else that I would say to look out for. there can be this feeling that you're having to build on your self-esteem and you're not relying on other people to build you up. And it can be a little uncomfortable because there's this sense of being like, man, that person, I thought they were my best friend. Like, they're not really kind of showing up for me, you know? And you've got Saturn in your 12th. So there is this sense of like intensity going on about whether or not you feel secure or valued within certain friendships or even within certain networks. The card that I get is the Seven of Cups, which means it's confusing, it's not clear. Don't jump the gun, make assumptions. It's really important for you not to be like looking at pictures or social media or things and making assumptions about things. Like, it could be like somebody owes you money and you're like, look at this person, they're out there going shopping. Like, what are they doing? Why haven't they paid me back, type stuff? You know, there's illusions going on and things that aren't totally clear. So we don't want to jump to any assumptions. That's really important. For everybody who's going through this transit, just hang tight. You know, let's wait until we get Venus in Taurus and Mars in Aries. Granted, that's not going to make everything kind of brand new either, because we are going to see Mars conjunct Jupiter, but there's something that's kind of been setting up for the better part of the last 2 months that's building up until this moment. And it's going to be taking place right around the new moon in Gemini on the 29th, when we see that it's then that we're really kind of like, okay, you know, we're going to walk the walk now and talk the talk. Here we go. And I think whatever is happening right now can be things that push us to the edge of, that's the line, you know. I value this so much that, you know, that's not going to fly, and we cut it off. But we also want to be made aware of all the trappings of Pluto and where it can be using fear tactics to kind of scare us into submission and not always kind of stand our ground when it comes to what we need to feel secure and what we need to feel loved. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Let me know. Leave me comments below. Where is this square taking place in your chart? Are you a late degrees Aries rising? Are you feeling it? It's all happening around my moon, so I'm definitely feeling it. And yeah, I really just want to say thank you guys for listening. Hope it continues to go well for you. I'll be back. I'm going to be doing some live readings here pretty soon on the channel, and also doing the astro weather. Stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.